Good space time, y'all. In this episode of the Citizen Cosmos podcast, I speak with GregTheGreek, ex-ETH core dev and co-founder and CPO at ChainSafe, building Web3 infrastructure. Me and Greg discuss the importance of product development, the importance of self-care, the journey from traditional education to being a founder in Web3, and knowing when to hand over the reins of power. We also spoke about adoption catalysts, the missing elements of Web3, free markets, bias, go early, and governance.
Ultimately, you have to give your opinion because it's impossible to teach anything without being subjective.
Do you think that the reason why you came to Web3 or to this space, whatever you want to call it, is actually solving something for the people out there?
Making people charge for something that was always free is ridiculous. We've gone 4 or 5 years without a market. Now we have a speculative market where people are sucking up tokens.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of the Citizen Cosmos podcast. Today with me is Gregory Markou. I hope I pronounced the surname correctly, aka GregTheGreek on Twitter. You probably might know him as that. He's the founder of ChainSafe, also the CPO at ChainSafe. Greg, hi. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me on. Pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure. The last time I had, I was going to say your people. No, I'm joking. The last time I had some guys from ChainSafe on, was roughly 2 years ago now, actually coming up 3 years. I think it was 2020 still, if it wasn't 2021, maybe 2. And we were doing an episode about Aragon chain, well, of course, that developed differently.
Yeah. I actually remember this podcast. Okay, that's funny. I remember that podcast being recorded now. Okay, I think it was with Colin and Aiden, maybe.
Yeah, it was Colin, Aiden, and one of the guys, I think he quit, Jorge.
Yeah, it would have been Jorge.
From Aragon 1.
Yeah, he actually just released his new product today, ironically. It's called Firm. It's like a new take on the whole like DAO space. It's definitely worth checking out.
Nice, definitely will check that out. Thank you for that. Greg, before I proceed with any of the other questions, I introduced you as the CPO, founder of ChainSafe, and ChainSafe is quite a big, not big in terms of like a huge, big brand as in on big physically, but it's big into a lot of the things it's doing. It's in a lot of places in crypto. Do you want to introduce yourself a little bit? Tell us about what you personally working on currently in ChainSafe. Anything else you want to add to your own intro? Maybe drink something, some interesting Americano coffee. No, I'm joking, of course. Just an intro for yourself, please.
No, for sure. My name's Greg. I'm Greek. I'm not a part of frat life. Sometimes I actually have to clarify that, ironically. Yeah, I started ChainSafe with 4 of my friends. Currently the CPO. Recently transitioned. I used to be the CTO for the last 3 years, and I have like a great honor that David, who was our VP of engineering, took over, and he's just crushing it already. So I used to work a lot in like the protocol stuff, like originally, how many years ago now, 4 or 5 years ago, started Lodestar with some people internally, which is our ETH2 consensus client. So I come from like a tech background, now focusing on our products, trying to elevate them, trying to make sure that, trying to get like our gaming interoperability solutions and honestly just like our entire ecosystem projects. So like our protocol node implementations off the ground in a way that it's a lot more meaningful and usable for our developers and consumers of them. So that's kind of what I focus day to day, is just working on our product strategy and things like that.
Just working on product strategy. One of those things. Just
working on product strategy.
just on product strategy. Yeah, that's like, damn it. Just working on product strategy here.
You know what? I'll narrow it down for you, without giving away too much. I'm trying to, one of the main focuses right now is looking at, how can we really accelerate the gaming space and make it so that game studios, like traditional ones, aren't here just to look, oh, hey, this is an NFT, another NFT. This is like, how can we leverage actual blockchain and decentralized tech to build better games? So you might not need crypto. And like, that's kind of what our whole thing is. So that's kind of what we're focusing on, trying to like show them that, whether it's saving resources on server costs by doing like more of a peer-to-peer game just for peering, and you don't need the crypto economic side, like things like that. That's kind of our main focus right now. My main focus right now.
Interesting. You know what? I mean, I wasn't planning to go this way, but since you mentioned gaming, not true. Honestly, I wasn't planning to talk about gaming. I had a set of questions different for you, but while we're on that topic, we actually started game dev recently, and I noticed one thing. Not gonna be advertising ourselves here at all, but I noticed one thing when I was doing the research. I noticed that a lot more teams and projects out there are beginning to be a little more explorations when it comes to blockchain game dev. And what I mean by that is that if previously all of your games were concentrating on, you had the game and it was just running somewhere, somehow, not even properly necessarily on some kind of blockchains. Usually it was just the NFT stored maybe on a blockchain or whatever, or anything like that. And now you have like, I had this idea personally and the team had this idea, and I've seen these ideas around. So it's not just like, it's not at me being clever. I'm seeing people are really getting there. I think that, people are actually exploring options within gaming. And here I would love to hear your opinion, where it is necessary to use the blockchain account for the person in order to develop his gaming character. And his gaming characteristics of the character are dependent on the way he uses the blockchain. So it kind of, incorporates, I've noticed on Osmosis, I think something like that they were trying. I mean, they didn't do a game, but they were trying and they're playing around with some things in the background. And of course, Avaguchi on Aave, right, was one of the first ones to go this way. We personally wanted, and again, what's your opinion on this, I don't know, theory, take, whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, so just to clarify, is your ideas kind of like the traits, so to speak, that you are kind of derived based on like your usage of the chain? Yeah, I think it's interesting. Listen, it's challenging, right? Because like I'm not into game design, so to speak, as in like game mechanism design extensively, but I foresee a problem there immediately, which is how can new participants get like quality like traits, if that makes sense, so there aren't these like OP, like overpowered traits or whatever just by spamming the chain or doing something like that. But I mean, it's a really interesting way for onboarding because the power users and the longer term users or people who have just done a lot of things definitely get interesting access to, your game right out of the gate, which I think is pretty cool, to be honest. It's an interesting way to bootstrap the community. That's how I see it.
It's cool that you say that. We could consider ourselves ecosystem developer, and I'm going to start pulling the quilt here just to reflect on what you said, though. I think that what you say is great that you said it as the first thing we thought about, and that's why we, at least when we're doing it, we always straight away, we decided to separate and create two entities. One that can be just for people that have not yet went that way, have not like used that blockchain yet, but want to, and the other one is for those, and that created two separate economic actors within the ecosystem. Well, hopefully that will do it. But let's stop pulling the quilt. It was just because you said that I wanted to hear your opinion. Before we go into some more questions, you said that you started ChainSafe with 4 friends. Do you want to get into that? I'm quite curious. I mean, you are definitely quite a big project with a lot of influence out there. I would love to hear more of that.
Yeah. So I'll go back a little bit further into like kind of into where to me and how I got into programming. I think that'll probably be it's kind of a nice segue. I originally back in the day wanted to be like a Bay Street, Toronto version of Wall Street, Wall Street guy. I wanted to do investment banking, got into business and tragically hated it within like a month in university. When it's, switched campuses, went into the economics stream and into the other campus, moved into from there. I took one programming course because I think it was an easy way to get like a requirement for a different thing and fell in love with Python like right then and there. I'd played around, like the classic story, played around with stuff, but I fell in love, got like a 98 or something, like almost it was the best mark I'd ever received. And then later that summer, I said, I'll take a boot camp because I don't have time in school to like go. Like I noticed, I look at the curriculum and the computer science curriculum was like not where I wanted it to be for how I wanted to go about it. And so I took a boot camp, learned like Rails, Ruby, that whole thing, Node, all that. And that's where I met one of my co-founders. And this was in like 2015, somewhere around there. And long story short, I ended up continuing doing that, got kicked out of computer science, ended up dropping out of school because, I didn't want to do economics with an environment major. Nothing to say against, those, but it just wasn't for me. The department told me to go to like college and I was just like, nah, I don't want to waste another 4 years. So I met my co-founder, one of my co-founders, Stu, there. He had been, then 2 years later, he had been going to like the local Ethereum meetup in Toronto. That was started by like the guys that did L4. That's long gone now, but for those that were around L4, and where the first meetup I went to, I saw Richard Moore demo Ether's Jazz, like long time ago. It was pretty awesome. And I went with Stu to that meetup and met the other co-founders, and we kept in touch for a few months. And then eventually I got a call being like, hey, we got this contract. Like, do you want to come do it with us? Some guy wants to build a POC. Someone else has to build a POC, and we built it. And then one thing led to another. We ended up, that's kind of how it formed. And that's how we kind of all got together. To be honest, if Stu had never gone to Ethereum developers meetup, I would have never met the rest of them. And if we didn't do that boot camp, definitely wouldn't have met them. So wild chain of like events over 3 years, really. Yeah.
Did you have, I mean, when you already like had your initial interest aroused for Ethereum and for blockchain, what was the drive for you to actually decide to work in this space? I mean, considering back 2015, you said, right? I remember the space very well in those years, and it wasn't, how to say, it was lively. It was actually in a lot of ways livelier than it is today. I mean, take Bitcoin Talk, right?
Yep.
Before the ICO wave, the big ICO wave. But what was your drive to come into this industry? Why?
It's funny. I didn't have it for a long time. In 2015, when I met Stu, he was telling me about Ethereum back then, and I said, I kind of shrugged it off. It was in 2017 when we started ChainSafe. Even then, when I did the first POC, I had been working on an app. It was peer-to-peer lending, so on like item level. So I guess it was kind of in the same realm. I just didn't realize it. And I had to finish that POC. I saw what smart contracts should do, and I still had to sit on it. The initial real click for me was ultimately transferring money. And it was just like a pain. I had to go to Europe, and I needed I think I needed to pull out like 2,000 euros or something. And I was just getting roasted. Like the banks, the tier twos, like everybody it was bad. And I think somebody set me up. One of my partners set me up with someone in Europe that was like, I almost got the deal done at like 0.5%, almost flush. And I was like, this is cool. And I think that was when it really clicked for me. But then I went from that to like protocol development really quickly. So
yeah, terrible stuff. I mean, those Europeans, really, the stuff that you have to do for them, right? I mean, seriously. I love it because I think it's cool, because everybody sort of expects from founders and builders in the Web3 space to come into Web3 already prepared. And it's not like that, sometimes we all get here for, to transfer money, and we end up in protocol development. And I think that says a lot about how strong the attraction is, right? How strong the force of pulling people in is, in my opinion, at least. You mentioned education briefly, and I know you did some teaching, I know, as well. Thanks God for the internet, it's an easy thing to... And what's your opinion about education and opinions, and to what extent, in your opinion, should people who are trying to educate other people, especially when it comes to things like finance, especially when it comes to things like very touchy stuff like governance, like privacy, should they promote their own opinion, or should they leave it up to, which is of course very difficult, to the person themselves to decide, okay, I hear your information, I hear both sides of the story, let me make my own decision? What was your approach as a teacher?
Yeah, so, that was a weird time for me. I was in fourth year. I was still in school. I hadn't dropped out yet, and got ChainSafe. I got the contract to work at this local college. And I was teaching just fundamental JavaScript. Obviously, there's opinions there. But I think when it comes to opinions, this is a challenging one, right? And this is when ultimately you have to give your opinion, because it's impossible to teach anything without being subjective. I truly don't think you can be opinionless. I think what's important is that the instructor gives an acknowledgement of their learnings, and like a background to them, so that people understand going in, this is why you are the way you are. On the weekend, I was at a hackathon, and I was giving a talk, and someone asked me, how do you make the best judgment call on what chain to build on? And I just led with simply because they had been doing Bitcoin research or Lightning research or something like that. And I led with, this is what I do. This is what I've done. I used to be a protocol developer for the Ethereum consensus. So I'm going to tell you an opinion that's a little bit different than what your professor is going to tell you. And I think that's the easiest way to lead into it, because otherwise you get stuck in what a lot of university students happen, and a lot of people in school, where I experienced too, which is my third year economics course. I get into fourth year, and the fourth year teacher was like, who had this professor? And then half the class raises their hand, and they say, well, I don't agree with their opinion, so everything you learned is wrong. And, if you don't lead with that as a starting point, you're going to run into problems with the education. So I think that's the main thing. Who's the author? And I think we don't do this well enough in blogs. Honestly, blogs should even say that. It's like, this is the author and this is who they are. Read about the author before you read the tutorial, because that's why the opinion is the way it is.
I like that you said it. I really appreciate it, because to me, a good book makes, personally, of course, it is a book which tries to as much as less to, or warns me that it was influenced by something like that, that their work was influenced that, or says, okay, you know what, you decide what you want to decide. Of course, it's very rare these days, but yeah. While we're on the topic of what things mean for you. And your journey inside of ChainSafe has been, well, it's been different, right? You went from doing one role to another role. Why did you change to product from the tech side to the product side? What's the importance, in your opinion, of product development? And why did you personally decide to go that way?
Yeah, great question. And something I've been trying to articulate well to people more recently, as it's only been a month. My main driver here is that I think, there's two things, right? One is like, as a founder, you need to also know when it's time to like step aside and like somebody else needs to like really take the reins because they can do effectively a significantly better job than you. That's first and foremost. And that's was one of the leading decisions. The other one is for the last like year, I've been trying, we as ChainSafe have been trying to create a much better developer, environment for people, whether they're building on our SDKs or our stack or just in general. And most of my focus has been turned towards kind of the DevX side. And I think it was something that is very easily done from like a product nature. And like, I wanted to get more into like understanding our users, talking with that type of, path. So it was a natural progression. It's my tech skills. As CTO, I wasn't even doing much coding anymore. I was falling behind in terms of like, what the standards were as I was focusing more on our products and like how we can look at them from that lens. So it was a natural progression. And to be honest, I think I've always liked building products more, like especially like POC stage and stuff like that. I think everybody secretly does. Not that I'm building much personally, but it's the flow. And like that's high level kind of the main reasons.
Abstracting details you do want to go into, the low, like, I don't know, whatever it may be, if there are any. If we stick to the high level, do you think that crypto today has enough product development? Do you think that crypto as it is today is focusing enough on products?
Oh, that's an interesting question. So there are many levels. For the longest time, we've only seen product development exist at the application layer in crypto and blockchain. The reason for it is I don't really know. But if you look at like the whole stack, right? We've got infrastructure, everything in between, the network infrastructure. The real like Web2 has all this productized. Now, I'm not saying we have to like everything needs to be paid for at like the P2P layer, but the point is there's like product lens being applied to everything. And I'm not suggesting that, everything ChainSafe does is going to become like a charged for thing. It's the idea of just putting a product lens to make sure we're building a good product for developers, right? And I think that's a problem. We're not at a point right now. We're starting to get to that point where there is a more of a product lens being applied to the dev tools side. But a lot of it is GitHub issues, Twitter sentiment, which is not how we build good dev tools. And that's also part of the reason why like this is important to me and why I want to go down this road. And I've embarked on this journey is because there is a much cleaner way and like much better way to like make sure this like next wave of developers is going to get what they need. We built Gurley at a hackathon in 2018, and we messed up the allocation schedule. The developer experience for like having 2 million developers in the ecosystem versus 10,000 or the 5,000 we had, very different. Gurley worked really well when there was like 5 to 10,000 of us. Everybody kind of knew who to reach out to and the faucets weren't getting drained left and right. This is like a product design decision that we need to go back, rethink and say like, how do we build this so that it scales, right? And I think this applies to SDKs and everything. And so this is where like my passion sits within product and like the intersection of tech and product.
By the way, about Gurley, I don't know why it sounds like to a foreign ear, it just looks like a natural pronunciation of it, I guess. I was going to let you do it. I was sure that you will do it. So I did my job. There we go. No, I'm joking. I can go that way, of course. But I wanted to keep it about your opinions. And you already said why you think it was working then. And I like to hear the person's opinions because, like we always say, we focus on the person, on the guest, and that the projects that he does is he's secondary, because if it wasn't for him, those projects might have not been started, might have been done by somebody else. We don't know. But it's cool that you talk about it from your perspective and how you see it. That's a very important, I think, these days. We're missing it a little bit in Web3, I think.
I think we are. I think it's completely disregarded half the time. The app level, not so much. I think the dApps and whatnot they have a pretty good lens for the most part, but everywhere else, I don't know. I don't see product people working on SDKs. I don't see product people working on the node level either, although they're busy. They have a spec to adhere to. I get that, but still, it's kind of missing a little bit.
It's interesting because you said about, product and GitHub. And of course, to my mind, what came with Gitcoin. And I was like, but we monetized it. We managed to create a product out of it. Or we didn't. Or is that not a product and yet?
I think that's like a different idea, right? I mean, like that's like a dApp. Again, like I'm referring to more, like the core infrastructure that like we use every day, people complain about and the complaints go to GitHub. I mean,
I understand. I feel it.
You know what I'm saying? The simplest thing, like imagine you just set up once a month, you interviewed like 30 of your SDK users and you sat with them on a Zoom call for 30 minutes each or 15 minutes, actually like figured out what they wanted and understand their problems. Then like you could skip the bike shedding that happens on a GitHub issue. I don't know.
I love this. I love it. But it's true. But it's funny. I've been working in this space for like 6 years or 7 years, and regardless of whether I've been working with somebody or for who somebody or for myself, it's always the same story. I mean, even like now, when it's myself and I'm knowing that I have to concentrate on it, we try to, but still, even now it took us time. So it's like, I know how hard it is sometimes to, get off your high seat and say, you know what, hey, I have users, I have community. They probably know what they want. Otherwise, they wouldn't come to me. So I want to let them express their opinions and actually do what they say. I understand what you mean.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it happens in the open source world. Red Hat didn't get to where they are by just releasing Linux software arbitrarily. Like people get interviewed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Talking about Web3.
And that's just like touching the surface.
Oh, of course. No, this is like surface. This is not even the tip of the surface, I think, But no, it's true. It's true. We have to be honest, right? I think the worst thing about, is when people, especially in crypto, you see this with some scam projects where people pretend to do things, But sometimes people just say, hey, like remember there was the guy who did the most useless Ether token or whatever, the first one, and he got an eye.
Yeah.
So he was honest, right? He wasn't lying about these like things, and people gave him money, man. Like damn, there you go.
Yeah.
But talking about Web3, I want to know, because regardless of how, as a founder, you might be shy about what you do, or you might not accept to fully the importance of your work. ChainSafe is a household name to an extent, especially in a specific circle. And ChainSafe includes all those names in it. You have Ethereum, you have Cosmos, you have Polkadot, and ChainSafe advertises itself as a Web3 builder. I want to know what Web3 means for ChainSafe and what Web3 means for Greg.
Yeah. Why don't we start with myself? I'll go that way. So listen, for me, this is kind of both. This is how we both see it too, a high level, like Web3 is a conglomeration of words, right? Like meaning the same thing. Like it's everything from crypto, blockchain, that whole, it could be NFTs. It's like all of that. And really it's about removing the need for, I truly see it. And I think most of us do at ChainSafe see it as like the fundamental building blocks, or it's how can we make things more decentralized? Does that mean it involves crypto? Does it mean it involves NFTs or blockchain tech or whatever? Like, it doesn't really matter. It's all of these things. We write cryptography libraries, we write networking libraries, we build nodes, we do a lot of different things, right? We write just SDKs. That's generally speaking very high, roughly what, we see it. Personally, for me, it's Web3 is almost like it's like a tool set for people to basically like choose their own adventure, if this makes sense, but like for yourself, your data, your computer, down the road in 5 years from now, that Web3 is literally like a setup wizard on your computer that says this, how do you want to manage how things work, how you operate on your phone, how you operate your bank account, how you operate data, your photos, just like generally speaking, it's the change in technology for like how we can just own and decide how we use the internet is really ultimately how I see it. I haven't had to answer that in like so long.
You know what? It is a cool thing. The reason I ask you is because I want to know your answer for sure. But now that you say that you haven't answered it in so long, I was most recently, I don't like to go to conferences in person. In my opinion, it's a waste of time, especially today. But no, honestly, I mean, even the networking can be done online. But okay, I understand. And there was recently a whole blockchain week in Lisbon. And I went there to do a few interviews in person. I wanted to do like a small road, and I was recording with quite a few interesting builders, and they were like short 10, 15-minute interviews. And it was like also big names, there was like guys from the Steakfish, there were like guys from a couple of big projects, there were some big validator names. And I asked all of them almost the same set of questions, more or less, in different words. It was like 3 or 4 questions. One of them was, do you think that the reason why you came to Web3 or to this space, whatever you want to call it, is actually solving something for the people out there? And I think when we ask people what is Web3 and they say that, it kind of reminds them, why are we doing what we are doing? At least to me, of course. I don't know what it means to you.
Yeah, this is something I say a lot, especially to like students, hackathons and stuff, which is I'm about to, like, I gave this presentation on the weekend about ChainSafe, about very glossary Web3 and stuff like that. And I was like, one of the first question was, a lot of people say it's, a scam or it's fake or whatever, it's this, that. And I was like, great. Where are you from? Where'd you grow up? What was your like financial situation in terms of access to banks, social? Do you have a social security number? And I asked like these like high level ideas, and most of the time it's North America, had a bank account since they can remember, these little things. And I've said, yeah, you're lucky. If you go to, and I've read this quote and I've seen it on Reddit a lot. There's people that play MMORPGs like RuneScape in Argentina where they'll go and they'll do a 9 to 5 and then do 5 to 10 farming gold and selling that for USD, but a stable coin, and direct into their, wallet. And they do this because they don't have access to good systems, right? And those are the times, that's how I remind myself, right? I think we're doing good. If at least we're helping like a few thousand people, that's not bad. Let's get to 1 million or a couple million, but I think that's big. And I think Mariano from, previously Maker has talked about this a lot and how it's like really helped his people down in Argentina. So yeah, I see it.
I do as well. And I think dedicated, this is why we also wanted to interview people about people, first of all, because, I think people who dedicate their life to spending in that industry do it for one or another reason. And again, there we go. Usually that reason turns out to be that, like you say, if it helps one person, then, hey, it achieved something, right? And then rather than... But this is actually about an interesting point, I think, maybe to ask you about, since you mentioned it, go early. An interesting, here's the devil's advocate question for you about the supply and about the biggest. Everybody's discussing how the supply, it costs them money. Oh my God, what are we going to do? Everybody's going to die. There's not going to be water. The cows are going to die. And so here's the question, devil's advocate question for you. Why not? Let it cost. Why not? It's a blockchain. Come on, we're in Web3. Let the free market decide for itself what it wants to do. If the free market has decided to, imagine it's like a blockchain. I'm really against censorship, but then there was a blockchain where the blockchain voted to, I don't want to go into that, but the blockchain voted to remove the user's funds from a particular, at first you're like, oh my God, that's really bad. But then you're like, well, isn't it the job of the governance to decide what they want to do? And if they all decide it and they're all in the same game, nobody's hiding that, okay, maybe for them that's development. So this is the devil's advocate question. Why not? Because I know you expressed the opinion that it should be free, and I understand why perfectly, but still.
Is that a Cosmos chain? Just curious. Was that Juno?
It was a Cosmos chain.
That was Juno.
It was Juno.
That's a tricky one.
Very tricky one. Super tricky one.
But let's get into Gurley. Yeah. I think we need historical context, part of this, and I think this is also the problem.
Please.
Historically, Ethereum has had free testnets as a public good for the community. This means that anybody can get access to it for free. It's a free market. Let the free market ride it out. I agree. I've been leading with that statement with like in-person discussions recently, and you can't stop it. It's inevitable. I can deploy our bridge to any chain I want and just try and start to suck up liquidity that way too. It's a free market. Do whatever you want. But there's like a moral thing here, in my opinion. And you also have to look at it historically. The first moral thing is that you don't think we would have done this? Like made a market for ourselves? I don't have much anymore. I've given away over like 20 mil over the last like 3-4 years. Like Gurley's been around. I'm down to like sub 10K Gurley ETH, and I've been giving it out. I give it out almost on a weekly basis, but I only give out in 32 increments because people need them for validators. I'm like really strict to that. But like from a moral perspective, it's like, I just don't see why this should happen. Like, if this is the problem, let's get something new going. Really, that's the fundamental solution I see, right? Is like making people charge for something that was always free is ridiculous. And, I've seen some arguments, well, people are buying it and donating the girly ETH and stuff, but you're just going to create a liquidity trap. There's now a market made that exists, that didn't exist. We've gone 4 or 5 years without a market. Now we have a speculative market where people are sucking up tokens. And yeah, people that started it are getting yelled at, and myself, MP, Offrey, people everywhere are getting yelled at because we hold like collectively, I don't know, like 20 million tokens or something, or 10 million tokens now, I think hardly less. And we're holding them. And no, it's like if I give it out, we're just pumping people's bags. Like, it's a tough one, but it's just like, it should be free. I'm sorry. Like, you shouldn't have to pay. Here, ETH Global had to contact me to get ETH to hand out at their hackathon because their students and their kids showing up couldn't pay for it. They don't want them paying for it. I personally funded the last ETH Global thing, and I'm going to fund the next one, and they call me whenever they need it. You know what I mean? It's like, this is the problem. This is why I hold 10,000, is because so that people that like need to use it can get access to it. If you want to pay for it, go for it. I don't really care. But at the end of the day, it's like there's people that can't pay for it, and you shouldn't have to pay even $1, even 10 cents, even a penny just to test your application. That's not why we have them, right? And you can test locally, sure, but there's no integrations, right? And that's the problem. You need integrations, which is why people want early. And I get it. Sepolia is like in a little bit of a weird state, but that's the fundamental problem there. Why I really don't believe in the fee market, right?
You don't believe in a free market in this case? Or is that what you mean, right?
No, having a fee market. Sorry, not free, like a fee. Oh my God, no.
I apologize. That's it. We're over it.
It's okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But look, let's try to play a little bit with the analogy. Let's try to get more into your head. So imagine, like, especially considering like what you say about open source and, what you say about the free market, not the fee market, the free market, the way it can change, us as humans as to do better things, to drive us to do better things. So in that, like, if we were to stick with that philosophy, and this is not me convincing you, I'm trying to get into your opinions. By no means, please do not think that. So by that, to stick to that philosophy, a lot of, if we go into that, it seems only natural to come to the conclusion that any idea that arises, doesn't matter what kind of idea, isn't really a product until it touches more than one person's thoughts. It becomes a product, not an idea, when many people come together, start working, and that's already a product. It's not just an idea in somebody's head. So how do you think we can, in the future, prevent cases like this happening where you guys, originally, you did it for one particular purpose and this was your idea, but now the market is kind of coming and saying, doesn't matter why. I mean, maybe the market is being selfish or maybe the market is being greedy and I don't want to like make decisions here, but in this case, it kind of seems that might be the real case and this is why that happened, right? But let's kind of abstract from that and then stick with theory. How can you prevent this from happening where the founder or a small group of people who are at the beginning prevent the market from developing and going the way it wants to go?
Yeah. Again, historical context, it's like, there's a lot of arguments to say, hey, we should have a canary network similar to like Kusama. But I still argue that we need like a free testnet that's destructive, that doesn't have value for the reasons I listed earlier. Because we have a lot of learnings. Offrey has posted an immense amount of research stuff on ETH Research. I can share the links with you after. As well as he's been campaigning for the better part of a year, maybe even longer, to like adjust the supply, because honestly, the easiest way is to have an artificial supply that just like infinitely grows as people need it. That's a real easy way to do it. Obviously, this requires protocol changes that, teams don't necessarily want to implement because they're, if we have really specific protocol changes just for a single testnet, it does introduce risk that is questionable. That's what has been discussed a lot. I believe that's the real solution, is to have like an infinite supply. Then you just simply, there's no point in charging for it, right? You can't have a market if the supply is going to be infinite. At least I don't think you can, but people are weird,
One argument against, I think, infinite supply that I had in my head, or maybe I saw something that led me to that thought, was, I cannot think of something. I can think, but I can always think of a solution to that, but there must be something I cannot. So in terms of economical mistakes, like if we're having a chain with infinite supply on one side and we're testing on that, and then we're going to a chain which is a complete copy of that, but I'm sure somebody along the way will manage to somehow create something different because of those numbers. Then somewhere down the line, it's like you create a product and you never thought about clicking this button, and the first user that you have clicks that button,
Yeah.
So, but again, your opinion,
I think by the time this podcast goes live, we'll have dropped an updated Gurley 2.0 style paper or document. Not necessarily actually Gurley 2.0, but like, let's think about the next version of a testnet. We've been working on it for the last like a couple of days and incorporating a bunch of the ideas. I think there's ways to do this without actually having, what's the word I'm looking for here, without actually causing like protocol changes, and we can do this behind
Division.
Yeah, which is like, first of all, we can create a ridiculously funny Genesis file. You've touched a block, you've touched an Ethereum testnet or mainnet in the last year, you get 1 million tokens. And then the validators, we need a couple, we can get like how many keys we want. Probably let's do like 100,000 keys. That's going to produce us a ton of ETH. And if we point the rewards address to a faucet and just have it drip out, or we constantly change it, there's infinite supply that will constantly be going every block. That's like 2 ETH, 2.5 ETH. Every 6 seconds, we'll be minting 2.5. That's plenty for the network to survive initially, I believe. And also, I don't think testnets should be long-standing. It's a challenge with infrastructure like oracles, getting the core building blocks, redeploying all this infra. I think we will get there where somebody will coordinate that. I've been thinking about it myself of like kind of coordinating like a testnet infrastructure team where, all right, Maker needs to deploy. Cool. Maker's deployed now. Compound, go deploy and make your DAI markets. And then like everybody kind of builds on top of that. I think that's one of the other challenges with spinning up a new testnet is getting the composability of applications sped up. But I think that's the start, right? Is, ephemeral. Maybe this only lasts for 6 months. That's enough supply to last you 6 months. And like we wind it down, spin it right back up. They don't have to go down overnight. It's just getting the infrastructure back up is really the challenging part.
Let's try to take another subject, but just as a last kind of reflection on that, maybe we can go into talking about crazy ideas, I guess. But one crazy enough idea I've seen, and this is way before any of this happened. It was the guys designing their canary network that supply the tokenomics of the canary network in a way where they dropped a percent to the validators that started, and then the validators should decide by themselves what to carry on doing it. And the majority, they just did like a huge, massive airdrop and said, hey, well, we could sit out and single-handedly probably pick developers from accounts by watching what they do, but fuck it, we're just going to drop like a whole, we're going to do a few drops, step by step, there is like and essentially just give out the whole supply to that. But again, I'm just curious, let's again not going to go early and what to do with that, but I'm curious as what do you think of things like that, of those kind of innovations where, you let the community itself decide who the supply goes to, or like
it's in a canary network that's different. I will admit. I think, if it's a canary network, you have to run real simulations. So you have to let the validators do whatever they want, right? They're the core, right? They're where the supply starts. Or well, the infinite supply, so to speak, right? That's where the funds get minted. All for it. Do whatever you need to do. Really doesn't matter. In a test network, though, I think there's a lot of weird incentives and structures you have to really think about. But I think you gotta just airdrop everybody enough a ton at the beginning as a starting point, and then whether through protocol change or other, just control the like inflow of new tokens coming in. Whether like the validators actually don't even receive a reward and the reward goes straight to like some other contract, it doesn't matter to me. It needs to be done that way. Alternative proposals I've seen is that like, why not just like pre-mint the deposit contract keys, and you basically have like, hey, all the major foundations like Maker Foundation, Uniswap Foundation, Gitcoin, all these guys will just get like 10,000 keys, just plug them into like one, machine, run a validator to help the network. Shouldn't cost you, it's like $50 a month at most, if you run it in cloud, and you can print your own supply and hand out that supply however you want, right? There's a lot of different ideas like that. I think getting the initial balance right is the most important though.
I know you're big on governance as well. Like on that note, I'm slowly gonna like move from that topic, but feel free, of course, to come back to that. But I know you're big on governance.
Yep.
And I wanted to ask you another strange question in my beautiful set of strange questions. What's your opinion on today's governance? And when I say that, then I'm talking about, of course, crypto here. I mean, what I see, and I'm gonna again talk from different sides, but I want to direct in a direction, of course. I see a lot of multi-sigs, which cannot make me happy on chain. I see a lot of people discussing proposals off chain and actually vouching for discuss proposals off chain, where I'm sorry, but you can delete information off chain and you can change information off chain. People for some reason like, no, let's go discuss it off chain. It's like, excuse me, but you have an admin who can like just delete people's things, and like, but anyways, what do you think about today's like state of governance? Are we mature enough to say that blockchain as a technology is ready to offer our governance solution, or maybe it's small scale, I don't know, or do we need still to change a lot of things and progress or not? I don't know.
That's a good one. Okay. Can we model existing governance structures that exist today on chain? Yeah, I think we've done that. I think the notion of one coin, one vote, type of style governance that exists, I think in some countries that's a thing. In Canada and United States, it's not. In Canada, we've got these ridings, which is just a region, and you elect people into that. We can model and build all this. Does the infrastructure exist for us to do that? Yeah. Does current on-chain governance work? My answer is going to say yes, absolutely. And I think it's working as intended, but it looks really bad because the reason why we're doing governance is just because it's fake. A lot of it, not all of it, a good chunk of it. I think a lot of governance exists as legal risk mitigation. And a lot of governance exists as a way for people to just step away from things, or at least make it look like they're stepping away from things. If you look at most governance systems, their technical committee is small, and that's usually the committee that has to bear the weight of a lot of these proposals and changes, and that's kind of unfortunate. But I think to answer your question explicitly, I'm going to repeat what I just said. The reason why I think there's doubt in the fact does governance on chain work is simply because we don't have any real use cases as to why we need it at the application layer specifically. I think governance has worked relatively well in the Cosmos and Polkadot ecosystems for their protocol. On the protocol level, I have to give kudos there. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to do, and it's worked. Polkadot had some parachains that kind of failed, and they had to like revert some stuff and kind of unbrick the parachain, so to speak, and it worked. Governance stepped in, did its job. Amazing. You guys just had governance turn down prop something like 90 something, and it's like that community turned it down. That worked. Like it might not have been wanting what some people wanted, but like it's working because it has something. There's real change that is impacted. The application layer just doesn't have anything overly that impressive, like a grants program. It works. Yeah.
I understand, but I like that. It's reassuring because it's nice to hear that we are ready, that we don't have to wait another 100 years. You mentioned Cosmos, you mentioned Polkadot. Before I get kind of to the last kind of question before that, not an easy one, not a difficult one, not an abstract specific, but very vague, I guess. Considering ChainSafe and your outreach in many different communities and in many different, especially in projects that are actually building protocols to build other projects, so to speak. What's your vision for the future of the interchain? And and I mean by interchain, I mean of course the whole of anything specific here in the next, I don't know, few years, 5 years, whatever you choose. You choose a time frame.
Yeah, I probably have a differing opinion from a lot of people you hear in the Ethereum space. That's also probably because, and why we're at ChainSafe, we've built ChainSafe the way we have, is because, a lot of people will say just kind of like L2s on L2s or whatever, rollups on rollups. Listen, I think the expressiveness you get from an app-specific chain that you can build within the Cosmos or the Polkadot ecosystem is extremely powerful. And I think these are things that should be complementary to every ecosystem. The future looks, in my opinion, like a seamless. I don't think we're picking networks at that point. I think we're signing transactions on a certain data type or a certain signature curve that is doing something somewhere. Interoperability, whether it be through IBC, through Sigma, which is what something ChainSafe works on, through XCMP over in Polkadot, it doesn't really matter. This stuff is eventually like, we are going to, or if it's a roll up like on L2 or an L5, on Ethereum, the future is just like, you're going to what's going to best serve you. If it's an ephemeral roll up and you need it only for like 10 hours or 30 minutes, and it's doing something, and fine, so be it. But like, I think this like war on, which app chain's better or whatever. It's the tech stack, are you better working in what Cosmos offers you, what Optimism offers you, or what Polkadot offers you? That's how you have to decide. And at the end of the day, the interoperability solutions that we're building now and that we're going to have in like the next 3 to 5 years are going to make it so that front ends are just slick. Wallets are, you're not managing a private key. You're just pushing like a Face ID. You're just doing Face ID, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, you're at Axis, and you want to swap DAI for Polkadot. It's just for dots or for atoms. It's just going to happen. You're not going to know that some cross atomic swap happened, or, you brokered some weird bridge under the hood 3 different times. It's just going to show up in your account. And that's the future of apps, really. And we really need to get that like through our heads, that our independent networks can't survive without each other. We've seen that doesn't work. Everybody's bridging to ever. Look at Sommelier, really good example. I love Sommelier. Zaki's project in Cosmos. It's DeFi Saver, which I thought was a great project, is an incredible project on Ethereum. On Cosmos, because we can do more advanced stuff off chain in the Sommelier chain. And then okay, we're ready to update our like Maker Vault or our complex like Yearn position on Ethereum. Cool. Send a IBC message. That's the future. You just don't know what you're using. And you just pick the chain that makes the most sense to like build your custom logic to. Maybe it's because Go better than Rust or whatever it is. That's my 2 cents. A little bit of a ramble.
No, absolutely. Thank you. No. This is thank you for saying that. This is something that we advertise as our goal and direction in community style. Of course, we bridge in communities, but yeah. I'm going to ask you the last 3 questions. They're like a small blitz. You choose whether to answer each one in a second or in a minute. It's up to you. So it's not like a blitz in a game. It's like 3 questions. It's going to go 3, 2, 1 because it's got 3 things, 2 things in one. So first one, 3 projects which recently you have noticed something technically interesting at around you. Please don't say Ethereum, Cosmos, Bitcoin, Polkadot or whatever. I don't know, Near. Like something that's really, it doesn't have to be 3 really, but at least a couple of projects that technically you saw something that you were like, yeah, that's cool.
Okay, I'll blitz it right now. Parallel, the card game, they have some really cool in-game economics they're building. I think what they're doing there is actually really interesting. Next one would be what's piqued my curiosity recently. Shameless plugs on both. Element Finance. I think their governance system is actually really awesome. I think a lot of people are going to start using it. They have a lot of people using it. It's like a governance framework. I'm on the governance board there, but still, the stuff is like light years ahead. And they're going in the right direction.
Shameless promotion.
Promotion. Yeah, huge. I said it's shameless promotion. And because it launched today, Firm, I've beta tested it back. I've got 0 affiliation. Jorge is a friend, but it's actually really slick. I think it really augments Gnosis Safe. Those will be my 3 Ethereum based for now. But
cool.
Well, yeah.
2 things in your daily life that you do.
You know what? One fourth one. Sorry.
Go on. Go for it.
It's old, but I remembered about it recently. It's called Canon. Use Canon. It was a hackathon project I judged at ETH Denver last year, and they basically are trying to like Dockerize your testnet setup for like contracts. He's from Synthetics. Really cool project because if you bootstrap that, then you can have your custom environment of like how you want Maker to look like. You can have it preceded with like 1 million vaults right out of the gate. Really cool project. There we go. There's a non-super shamelessly plug one.
I love it, Greg. Thanks. Sorry, man. 2 things in your daily life that motivate you to keep on building Web3.
Self-care. That encompasses a lot of things like fitness. I'm an active, sauna, cold plunge type person. I work out quite a bit and cardio too, no offense to anybody, but get your cardio in. And one more. I think that's what, mental health, that's so important. That keeps me motivated. And honestly,
wow, that's a big one.
It is, but it's yeah.
Well, whoever's listening to this should see our faces now. It's like, mental care, you need it.
Yeah. Honestly, what keeps me motivated is talking. You know what? I talk to my parents every day. at least for like 20 minutes, probably each one individually, and just telling them about like what's going on or hearing what they're doing, and just like, that little bit of share that keeps me going every day. It really does. Gets you kind of out of your echo chamber. They have no idea what I do. They're super confused. So it's really reminds me, when they go like, oh, that's cool.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
No, it's true. It's true. It's really lovely. I love it. And
Yeah.
last one, I promise. One person or personage or character or book writer, a coder, content creator, I don't know, I don't care. It doesn't matter if it's dead or alive, real or not, that influenced you in your life and somehow and keeps on maybe even influence you. I don't know. Maybe you can read his book and you can suggest it. Maybe it's a GitHub account. Maybe it's a dead invented character. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. Really, really tough one. I've thought about this a lot. Personally, I think it's one of those things that like people just like to say. It's like, hey, but there is one, and I don't know if I want to credit it to the author or if I want to credit it to the fictional character. As a kid, I read a ridiculous amount of Sherlock Holmes based literature. Not that it's like that good all the time, but it's like the creativity of the character and the problems, I think, are what gave me perhaps some creativity in my life, in terms of like how to think about things. Not that like I can do that. I mean, the guy's crazy. It's fictional. He smokes like heroin or something like that. And then
opium. Yes, a lot of opium.
And opium. Yeah. And then just figures out.
He doesn't solve crimes. Nah.
No, he doesn't solve crimes, just in his head. But like, I think the point is like, it's the creativity and of the literature. Yeah, it was a big deal.
So I think Arthur Conan Doyle was.
Oh yeah, that's the name. There you go. Yeah.
Greg, thank you very much. I'm really, 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 really thankful that you managed to make it to us. And let's, for everybody, everything, of course, that you mentioned, we will have as links to the episode. Other than that, everybody follow ChainSafe and see what are they developing. They're developing some fucking cool stuff. So
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And maybe before we go, how about your favorite non-Web3 company?
Oh, wow. Non-Web3 company or Web3 company?
No Web3. Web2.
Wow, you put me on the spot. Okay, that wasn't expected. Can I say the Inquisition? Like we're trying to, I'm joking. This is definitely not Web2. This is a bit earlier than that. I don't know, man. You lost me. You caught me on the spot. You really caught me on the spot. I don't know.
How about tweet it at me later? I'm curious to hear what you say.
Okay, I will send you.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. I won't hang up yet, don't worry.
Thank you very much. Don't hang up yet. Thank you. Thanks.
This content was created by the Citizen Cosmos Validator. If you enjoyed it, please support us by delegating to Citizen Cosmos and help us to create more educational content.